Hi everyone, welcome to our channel, Rebecca, Stu, and the crew. I'm Rebecca, and today we have some Dollar Tree DIYs for you guys. There's two different portions of the video, so we'll do these three projects first. The supplies we're going to need are some different paints from Dollar Tree. We're also going to either use paint brushes or a sponge from Dollar Tree, and then some painter's tape and gloves. Those are both optional items, but then we'll be using some twine, some greenery, flowers of your choice to decorate these up just a little bit. I also purchased those from Dollar Tree. We'll need some hot glue and some scissors. And then I used a sanding block for some of them. Also, we're going to use a few different signs from Dollar Tree. Some are old, some are new. We're just giving a facelift to some of them because we've owned them for a while. And then we'll use some different stencils that are new at Dollar Tree. So let's get crafty. So this very first sign, they had this out around Valentine's Day this past year, and I wanted to change it up just a little bit. I thought this stencil would look really cute on this little farmhouse here. So I chose to lightly sand the paper with the sanding block and then wipe it off with a damp cloth to make sure there was no paper residue left behind. It was really shiny, so I wanted to make sure that the paint was going to stick well. And I did 2 coats of this chalk paint from Dollar Tree. And as you notice, I did not paint the top portion, the roof. I like that natural wood look. I thought it looked really pretty for this sign here. Now I let it dry, and then once it was dry, I just took the stencil out of the packaging. I didn't end up taping it down. Now it doesn't fit quite perfectly on this sign here, but we got it to fit for the most part. And then I chose to use a paintbrush to add the paint. Now it didn't completely lay flat, so I did get some paint underneath of the stencil a little bit at the top, but you don't want to let this dry too long, because if you do, when you lift the stencil off, it will pull up the edges of the white paint. So you want to make sure that you don't let it sit around too long. So that's the first one done. We just want to keep it kind of simple. Now again, this sign I've had for quite a while from Dollar Tree. I think they had it out like 3 years ago. They had a tree that went with it, and they have different sayings on the front about family. It has this clip on the front. I just removed that with the screwdriver. And then I took some white chalk paint and paint the front of it. And I did not paint the back. I left it as is. It's just plain brown. But I did paint this with 2 coats of paint because you could see those shiplap lines that they had drawn in it. And I wanted a nice smooth surface on the front. So once it was dry, I took this farmhouse stencil and a piece of the bath sponge and dipped it in just a tiny little bit of paint and dabbed lightly over the word farmhouse. And I removed the stencil immediately. I let it dry, and then I turned it upside down, and I put the leaves down a little bit further on the house there, and just use a small amount of paint to dab on the rest of the stencil. And as you can see, it just has a lot better control. It just has a nicer edge there. While that one's drying, we're going to start working on this one. I remove all the paper and then lightly sand it with my sanding block. I am using a razor blade here to remove the paper. The paper on this sign was never straight. It was a little bit off center, and there was some paper hanging over the edge. So I did want to remove the paper off of this one, sand it down, wipe it off, and then you can get a nice smooth painted surface. I chose to use this really light gray color. It's the Apple Barrel brand paint from Walmart, and it did take just the 1 coat of paint. And we will let that dry. Once it's dry, we add the stencil. Now again, this stencil is a little bit larger than the sign itself, so I don't want to do all of the wording, which was why the bath sponge is being used again. It just gives me more control over the stencil and where I'm putting the paint, and I can just dab the excess paint off if I get too much onto the sponge. I just dabbed it onto a paper towel, and it just seemed to work better than the paintbrush. I really like the control of the sponge versus the brush, and it gave it a really nice finish. It has a nice edge around the stencil. So if you try this, I would recommend using the bath sponge or any sponge you have, really. I think it just works better than the paintbrush. Now the stencils themselves stick fairly well to what you're putting the stencil on. They're not adhesive on the back. They don't stick, but it does have almost like a static electricity type feel to it just because of the material that it's made out of. So we'll finish doing the stencil here. As you can see, I left local and fresh out. I didn't do that portion of the stencil. That's the part that really was hanging off of the edges there. So I chose just to leave it out. So once that stencil is removed, we'll let it dry and then we can start to decorate our signs. Now the barn, I said I'm just leaving as is. The farmhouse here, you could take some of these eucalyptus leaves. If you pull them straight up off of the stem that they're on, then there's this little like eye hook loop thing, and you can actually stick them into each other end to end and then end up making this little wreath with no glue, no extra wire, no extra string. They just stick together, which is really nice. So I make this circle, I glue it onto the farmhouse to make a wreath, and then I took a little bit of twine. It's the brown and white twine from the shore living area of the store, and we will glue that right to the top of the wreath. And then once that was done, I took some different white flowers and some like baby's breath style flower, I guess you could say, and we just glue that in around the different parts of the wreath there. And that one's finished. Again, just keeping these simple. The farmer's market sign here, we're going to wrap that same twine we used in the last one to wrap around the neck here of the sign. And I went around probably about 10 times until I had the whole piece of twine finished. I didn't feel like cutting it off, and it really wasn't that much. I just kind of eyeballed about how much I would need. And we'll glue that end down. We'll put some lamb's ear leaves on, and I add a little bit of hot glue to make sure it stays. Then I took a small white flower and I attached it to the sign also right where those leaves attach to cover up where the stem was at. Then once that was done, I took a small dot of hot glue underneath of that leaf that keeps falling down in front of the stencil. So I just put some hot glue under it and glue it to the side. And as you can see, using that sponge just gives you a nicer finish. It has a nice crisp edge. So I highly recommend using this sponge, and you can see you can turn some Dollar Tree signs into some new fun projects. So the last project here, the supplies we're going to need will be some Dollar Tree t-shirts, or you could use their tote bags. They have these new ones out that are blank that you could use. Also, we're going to use these iron-on transfers from Dollar Tree. They have actually 8 total out right now, and we'll need an iron. We're also going to need a pressing cloth, and I'm going to use some iron-on vinyl. You can use paint, a stencil, it's really up to you, or the vinyl. And then you'll need a shape or a stencil to put down of the vinyl. So let's get crafty. So the first thing we're going to do is I cut out this shape. If you're using vinyl, you'll want to tape your picture onto the vinyl and cut your shape out with your scissors or a razor blade if you don't have a cutting machine. I've shown you guys before in past videos how you can use this vinyl without a cutting machine. Large shapes like this are easy to do that way. So all you're going to do is place the matte side down, shiny side up, and then you'll iron this for about 30 seconds on high heat, pressing really firm with a pressing cloth, and then follow your directions on your vinyl. Depending on which kind you have, sometimes you peel this paper off if it is cold, sometimes you wait, or you could do it right away while it's hot. So it just depends on which vinyl you are using. So once you have it pressed to the shirt, what you'll want to do to make sure it's pressed really well is flip it inside out and then press it again for another 15 to 20 seconds. So once that's done, you just want to smooth out your wrinkles, and then we can use the iron-on rhinestones from Dollar Tree to layer this project here. So I'm going to use the heart one. They have a butterfly, a tiger, and a feather. They also have the word hope, faith, queen, and blessed. So those are the new ones that are out. I showed those a few weeks ago in the Dollar Tree videos. So all we're going to do is peel the backing off. You can toss it. You don't need that anymore. Now this sheet is sticky with the rhinestones on it. You're just going to line it up on top of your vinyl and your shirt where you would like it to be. And once you figure out your placement, you're going to press it down so it sticks to your shirt. Now we're going to take our pressing cloth, and it says to press for about 30 seconds, high heat, and to work in a circular pattern. I don't go in a circular pattern. The one time I did that, it messed the shirt up. So I just do small, even pressured strokes across the shirt. And I do probably a little bit longer than 30 seconds. Really, I went almost a minute. So now you want to let it cool before you remove the clear film. That's the directions on the packaging. So I let it cool down, and then I very slowly pull it away, because if any rhinestones look like they don't stick, I push the clear paper back down and I iron it again. So I just work really slow, checking to make sure all of the rhinestones are stuck to the shirt, and I don't just rip it off as fast as I can to make sure you know, that the whole thing has stuck down and I didn't mess it up anywhere. So once you pull this off, you're going to do the same thing we did with the vinyl. You want to take your shirt, you want to flip it inside out, and you want to press it again from the back to make sure that all that glue is sticking. And I did that for about 15 to 20 seconds. And this is what the shirt looks like. We made one of these shirts about 2 years ago, just with the heart, to do a review video. We are still wearing that shirt. My daughter's still wearing it. Not a single rhinestone has fallen off. So I highly recommend these iron-on transfers from Dollar Tree. I absolutely love them. And again, you don't need a vinyl cutting machine to use the iron-on vinyl from the craft stores. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget, we do our Dollar Tree videos on Tuesdays and Fridays and DIY videos on Thursdays. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And here are some other videos from our channel you might also enjoy. Have a great night, everyone.